September 17th, 1944. Early morning. Major Digby Tatham-Warter moved through the shattered streets of Arnhem with deliberate purpose. He carried no rifle, no automatic weapon, nothing that might seem adequate against the German soldiers waiting ahead. Instead, he gripped a long black umbrella, its tip tapping lightly against the rubble-strewn pavement. The city was a skeleton of its former self. Bricks crumbled in heaps, wooden shutters splintered, smoke curling from fires in the distance. Somewhere nearby, a church bell had been knocked askew and chimed slowly, mournfully, warning of the chaos that awaited. A low rumble announced the approach of a German armored car, wheels grinding over broken stone and twisted iron. Most men would have frozen or ducked for cover, but Tatham-Warter did neither. He stepped into the open, umbrella in hand, and advanced toward the vehicle. From behind a shattered wall, a fellow soldier called out in disbelief. "That thing won't do you any good." Tatham-Warter glanced back, calm and almost amused. "Oh my goodness, Pat. But what if it rains?" He pressed forward. The umbrella struck at the driver's eyes. The vehicle shuddered and ground to a halt. For a moment, the street belonged to him. This was Major Digby Tatham-Warter of the British 1st Airborne Division, a man whose eccentricity, his bowler hat, his umbrella, his fearless disregard for convention, would become legendary, even as Operation Market Garden, the campaign in which he fought, descended into chaos. The plan was audacious. Allied forces had conceived Operation Market Garden to end the war before Christmas 1944. Paratroopers would leap behind German lines to seize a string of bridges across the Netherlands, allowing tanks and infantry to sweep northward into Germany. The northernmost objective, the bridge at Arnhem, became the pivotal prize. Its capture would open the road, but it would also expose the soldiers to the deepest stretch of enemy territory. Tatham-Warter's 1st Airborne Battalion had dropped into this uncertainty early that morning. From the moment his parachute touched the ground, reality shattered the carefully drawn plans. Units scattered upon landing, radios failed, and the enemy was stronger and more prepared than intelligence had indicated. Streets that appeared deserted on the map were, in fact, crawling with German troops, fortified in houses, schools, and makeshift barricades. Amid this confusion, Tatham-Warter's approach was simple: be visible, be fearless, and let the men follow him. His umbrella became both a signal and a symbol. When raised, men knew where to advance. When lowered, it meant caution or cover. It was unconventional, absurd even, but it worked. The first hours were a blur of movement, street by street. Tatham-Warter led assaults on small German positions, using his umbrella to jab, strike, or point as needed. Soldiers recall him laughing under fire, even as bullets whined past. One soldier later described him as a man who took danger as a companion, not an enemy. In the courtyard of a ruined building, Tatham-Warter encountered a group of German infantry emerging from a side street. Rather than ordering a volley of fire, he ran forward, umbrella in hand, and jabbed at the nearest soldier. The suddenness stunned the Germans. By the time they recovered, the British troops had advanced, pushing them back. Hours passed, but Tatham-Warter's eccentric courage became the anchor for the men around him. In the midst of miscommunication and scattered units, one officer with a visible umbrella could create cohesion out of chaos. By late morning, the battalion had encountered the first significant German resistance near a canal crossing. Tanks and armored cars were positioned to block every possible route. Artillery fire shook the streets, and cries of wounded men echoed from every corner. Tatham-Warter, always at the forefront, dodged shells and bullets with almost absurd nonchalance, guiding small groups through gaps in the enemy lines. It was during this advance that the story of the umbrella and the armored car became emblematic. Tatham-Warter spotted a German vehicle moving toward a group of trapped soldiers. Without hesitation, he stepped into the open and jabbed the umbrella into the driver's vision. The car halted, stalled, and for a brief moment, the danger was suspended. Soldiers later recounted watching him calmly pull back the umbrella, glance at his men, and carry on as though nothing unusual had occurred. The city itself seemed alive, reacting to the battle. Cracks in the cobblestones sent small clouds of dust with each step. Broken glass shimmered in the sunlight. Doors hung crooked on their hinges, rattling in the wind of passing shells. In this fractured environment, Tatham-Warter thrived. He understood that fear was contagious, but so was courage. His very presence was an instruction manual in boldness. Even as the day dragged on, Tatham-Warter refused conventional safety. At one point, a shell exploded nearby, sending bricks and wood flying. While other men took cover, he continued forward, umbrella ready, shouting instructions, pointing the way, rallying units who had begun to falter. Observers later remarked that Tatham-Warter seemed unaware of his own vulnerability, or perhaps he simply refused to consider it. His priority was the men around him, the mission at hand, and the absurd logic of using whatever tools were available, including a simple black umbrella, to meet impossible odds. By evening, the battalion had suffered significant casualties. Streets that had been teeming with life were now littered with debris and silence, punctuated by distant gunfire and the groans of the wounded. Yet Tatham-Warter continued to lead, reorganizing groups of men, coordinating movements without the benefit of functioning radios, and keeping morale intact in a situation that would have broken lesser officers. Stories from that day emphasize both the danger and the levity he brought. One soldier remembered a moment when a German sniper fired at Tatham-Warter, narrowly missing him. He ducked just enough to avoid the shot, then raised the umbrella again, pointing toward the next objective. His men laughed quietly, relief and disbelief mingling. They were alive, in part because of this man who faced death as a constant companion. The night of September 17th descended, and the streets grew darker, the smoke thicker. Tatham-Warter continued his work, guiding patrols, checking positions, and keeping lines intact. By this point, the absurdity of the umbrella had transformed into legend among the men. It was no longer a simple accessory. It had become a beacon of survival, a tangible sign that someone in command had clarity in the confusion. Reports from the following days confirmed that Tatham-Warter was repeatedly at the front line, often separated from his battalion, yet always managing to regroup men and lead them into positions that minimized losses where possible. His approach was never reckless for show. It was strategic, rooted in a keen understanding of human psychology and the chaotic realities of urban warfare. Even as Operation Market Garden ultimately faltered, the plan was overambitious, the enemy resistance underestimated, the stories of Tatham-Warter's actions persisted. The umbrella incident, while minor in the larger scope of the battle, became symbolic. It illustrated a truth about war, that courage, ingenuity, and presence of mind often mattered more than firepower. By the time Tatham-Warter was eventually captured later in Arnhem, his reputation among both his men and enemy forces was cemented. He had survived not because he followed standard procedures, but because he adapted, improvised, and led with both audacity and a deep understanding of the human element in combat. In the years following the war, soldiers who had served under him recalled his eccentricities: the umbrella, the bowler hat, the calm laughter under fire, and consistently noted one thing: Tatham-Warter had been completely unshakable, entirely unorthodox, and in moments that defined their survival, exactly the leader they needed. September 18th, 1944. Dawn broke over Arnhem, but the city offered no relief. The streets were quiet now in places, but the silence was dangerous. Snipers lined the rubble-strewn buildings, and German patrols prowled through alleys once thought cleared. Tatham-Warter moved steadily through the remains of a street market, the umbrella still in hand, tapping it on walls to signal directions to scattered groups of British paratroopers. Despite exhaustion, he pressed forward. Every step, every glance measured the chaos, and yet his humor remained intact. Small, understated, but it reminded his men that courage could be lighter than fear. At a crossroads, a team of men hesitated under the remnants of a half-destroyed building. Their radios were dead, their officer wounded, and panic was settling in. Tatham-Warter arrived, raising the umbrella high above his head. Instantly, the soldiers straightened, following him as he led them down a safer route, circumventing a sniper nest he had spotted from the corner of his eye. The day brought more encounters with enemy armor. On one occasion, a half-track threatened to sweep along the street, cutting off a group of men moving to a critical bridgehead. Tatham-Warter, true to form, confronted the vehicle alone, umbrella in hand. His men watched in disbelief as he jabbed at the driver's vision, forcing the half-track to halt, just long enough for the soldiers to take cover and reorganize. While these actions might appear comical on paper, they were deadly serious in practice. Every moment of hesitation could cost lives. Every decision was immediate, and every improvisation was tested by the reality of urban combat. Collapsing buildings, intersecting gunfire, and civilians caught between the two armies. Throughout that morning, Tatham-Warter's leadership was not limited to physical courage. He became a coordinator in the midst of chaos. When units lost communication, he would gather men from different detachments and assign them tasks based on their strengths, pointing them toward objectives using the umbrella. In the absence of functioning radios, it became a symbol of clarity, a visible thread through the unraveling fabric of the battle. By midday, the battalion was struggling. Supplies were low, casualties mounting, and the bridge at Arnhem remained stubbornly in enemy hands. Tatham-Warter, ever at the front, continued to direct movements, often moving ahead of his men to scout, signal, and provide the calm confidence they so desperately needed. Soldiers recalled that in the thick of firefights, he never hesitated, never flinched, and always maintained a sense of humor that cut through the tension like a knife through smoke. One of the most remarkable aspects of Tatham-Warter's command was his insistence on visibility. While other officers might hide in relative safety, he made himself a target, knowing that his presence inspired his men. In one instance, he led a detachment across an open square while under fire from German machine guns and artillery. Bullets whined past, debris fell around them, yet Tatham-Warter walked at the front, umbrella raised, signaling the way. The soldiers followed, and though casualties occurred, the maneuver succeeded in linking fragmented units. By the afternoon of September 18th, it was clear that Operation Market Garden was faltering. The plan had been ambitious from the start, relying on precise timing, unbroken communications, and the assumption that German resistance was manageable. None of these conditions existed at Arnhem. Supplies dwindled, reinforcements were delayed, and the city itself became a deadly maze of fortified positions, rubble, and unseen enemy. Yet even as the larger mission teetered, Tatham-Warter continued his work with unwavering determination. During the final defensive operations, his umbrella became both shield and spear. In close-quarters encounters, he would jab at advancing soldiers or use it to knock rifles aside. In one reported case, he disarmed a German soldier who had cornered a small group of British troops, striking decisively with the umbrella to create an opening for escape. For his men, these moments were emblematic of Tatham-Warter's approach: bold, unconventional, effective. As the day turned to evening, the situation worsened. Allied forces were unable to reach the paratroopers at the bridge, leaving Tatham-Warter and his battalion surrounded. Exhausted, wounded, and increasingly cut off, he continued to rally the remaining men. He moved between positions, checking on each group, giving orders, offering reassurance, and when appropriate, using humor to steady nerves. The umbrella, ridiculous to any outsider, was a beacon of survival in a city that offered none. By September 19th, the 1st Airborne Division's situation was dire. German forces controlled key points across the city, artillery fire cut off avenues of retreat, and the remaining soldiers faced exhaustion and limited ammunition. Tatham-Warter's leadership remained crucial. He orchestrated withdrawals where possible, coordinated small-scale counterattacks to buy time, and ensured that even as the city fell into enemy hands, the men under his command retained structure and cohesion. It was during these final moments that Tatham-Warter's presence became almost mythic. Men reported seeing him standing in open streets, umbrella raised, directing scattered units with calm authority. His audacity, laughter under fire, and visible courage inspired the remaining troops to continue fighting, even when survival seemed unlikely. Eventually, Tatham-Warter was wounded and captured by German forces. His conduct during the battle had left an impression on both friends and foes. Soldiers who served with him remembered the umbrella as a symbol of audacity and leadership, a tool that had saved lives not through conventional means, but through confidence, improvisation, and sheer presence of mind. German officers noted his fearless approach and unorthodox methods, recording in their reports the unusual sight of a British officer confronting armor with nothing but a black umbrella. In the aftermath of Arnhem, Tatham-Warter's story circulated among surviving paratroopers. The battle itself was a strategic failure, and yet the personal narratives that emerged were filled with awe at his courage. The umbrella became emblematic not of absurdity, but of resourcefulness. The idea that in war, sometimes unconventional methods could produce real results. Beyond Arnhem, Tatham-Warter continued to serve with distinction. He survived captivity, returned to Britain after the war, and lived a full life, passing away in 1993. His legacy endures not through medals or rank alone, but through the stories told by those who witnessed him in combat. A man who led through audacity, laughter, and unorthodox brilliance. A man who could stop an armored car with a single umbrella. A man who understood that leadership sometimes meant being visible, fearless, and utterly human in the midst of chaos. Today, historians reflect on Tatham-Warter's actions not as curiosities, but as lessons in leadership under extreme conditions. His story reminds us that war is not only about strategy and firepower, it is about people, decisions, and courage. The umbrella was not a novelty. It was a tool of survival, a means of inspiring men, and a symbol that even amid destruction, humanity and ingenuity endure. In Arnhem, when the city itself seemed lost, one man's unorthodox courage created a thread of order and hope. That thread saved lives, gave structure to chaos, and ensured that, even in defeat, the men under Major Digby Tatham-Warter's command were never without guidance. His actions remain a testament to the extraordinary ways ordinary humans respond to unimaginable pressure, a reminder that heroism is often measured not by weaponry or rank, but by presence of mind, courage and audacity when everything else fails.